This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at FMX 2016. To my immediate right is Rainer Gombos, who's co-founder, CEO of Realtra. Welcome to the program, Rainer.
Hello. How's it going, Neil?
Very good. It's been a great show, I think, for everybody. And I'm curious to know what you're doing here. I understand you work in photogrammetry and videogrammetry. Can you talk a bit about these technologies? What do they do? Why are they so important?
Yeah, so with video and photogrammetry, you can capture the world and also have volumetric content at the end. So you take lots of pictures or video streams, and then after some processing, you have a volumetric, three-dimensional, truly three-dimensional representation of the world. And what you can do with that is you can create content for virtual reality with it, and people can walk through this content that looks very reality-like.
So maybe you could elaborate as to why this is such a big deal. I mean, we've had digital content before. Can you maybe elaborate what the limitations were before and what this brings to the table?
Yeah, it has been around for a long time. The photogrammetry has been around specifically pretty long, and people have been using it for different mediums, but because there were no real three-dimensional displays out there that would show it in a way that was worth the effort, it hasn't been done so much before. So if you do it now, then you have a nice scene, looks like reality, but it's static. And then videogrammetry allows us to fill the scenes with life. And videogrammetry is quite a bit more complex because you're dealing with a huge amount of data. And if you think, okay, photogrammetry, usually you want to take a lot of pictures and they should have a very high resolution. And you can't easily get that with video right now. The video resolutions are much smaller than photo resolutions. And you don't want to use a lot of video cameras that you then need to sync, because you would create these terabytes and petabytes of data. So it's a bit of a data problem that wasn't really worth tackling yet. But now that we have three-dimensional devices, it's more worth doing and exploring. And some companies have made a lot of progress in coming up with good ways of capturing content, processing it, and then playing it back.
So I just want to make sure I understand the concepts here. So what you're doing is you're taking real-life objects, you're capturing them with an array of cameras, so maybe a sphere of cameras from different angles, and then once you have this information, you're able to put it into, call it like virtual reality experiences and so on. Is that accurate? Am I missing some steps?
Something like that, yeah. So basically, when you think about how much data would be required to show a real reality-like scene, you realize quickly that it's just an insane amount of data, that you can't really capture it. So you have to find workarounds. So the workaround that we're exploring is to work with, to really separate the static and moving parts of a scene, and then capture them or create them in different ways. All of it is based on photography and on videos, or mostly on that. And then they're assembled in a game engine usually. So you have a static background, and then the parts that are moving, you capture with this more difficult videogrammetry technology. We're using 8i right now for some of that. I was with 8i for quite some time, so I've recorded a lot of content with 8i technology. I'm very familiar with that, and it works well with realistic-looking backgrounds. If the foreground, the content, the moving content is realistic, then the background should also look realistic.
So let's talk about some working examples. I mean, at Realtra, you showed me a series of demos running on the HTC Vive. Yep. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so most of these demos were created on the site with very little invest in time and resources. So they're very much like early examples of what could be possible in this medium. We're showing them in the Vive so people can really explore the scene. They feel more immersed when they can move around. They have a much better understanding of distance and scale when they walk through a scene in the Vive. So we're using that. In one of the scenes, like in the wasteland, I recorded a desert scene with photogrammetry. So basically, just I took a lot of pictures, and then we processed these pictures and had a volumetric scene. From that, we optimized it for the viewer roaming area in the Vive, which is pretty big, or as big as you want it to have. Like here, we have a nice large roaming area, and then people can walk through it. But you don't want to have too much data in it, because these video files, these volumetric video files that you get from the video grammetry process, they're pretty large still. You know, if you update these scenes or these volumes 30 times a second, you need to make sure that there's not much other stuff in the scene right now. So the scenes need to be optimized. Lots of workarounds. Still, you have like a manageable. You have a large but manageable file size at the end of these experiences, and I think we're ready for much more content now.
Well, I can say that it's very convincing. I mean, the Wasteland was a good example. You know, you're standing in the middle of a desert. I understand you've got a little bit of a family linkage with the Wasteland demo, because one of the model, because I think, is
my daughter was helping out. Yes, she was interested, and again, like most of these experiences, they were not scripted. We were like, okay, we have these tests that we're shooting this day, and let's shoot something else. What should we do? Maybe something apocalyptic, something that is more like of a fictional.
Like Mad Max. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So Borderlands, or like fictional themes, yeah, that hopefully hint at narrative and that storytelling would be possible. A lot of people are saying, oh, how do you do storytelling in VR? Well, basically you're given a space, and now you're given a space that could look realistic, and then now you could put people into that space. So, all right, well, you should be able to do storytelling then in some way. But I had to figure out, how do you do a scene where there are people in there, where things are happening. So we created this demo scene with it. My daughter came in, and we got someone to put a costume together. But again, these projects were very small. They were done in a relatively short amount of time. Wasteland was shown at Sundance, at the Sundance Film Festival. And then there were some other demos shown as well there as part of the 100 Humans presentation of 8i then.
Well, the other demo that was actually very memorable was the one where people are dancing around you. It starts off with one person, then two person, then something 5 people are dancing around you. And it was very convincing. And forgive me for using the words, but awkwardly so. And I mean that because you're in the middle of the circle, people are dancing around you, and you're kind of supposed to do something, but it's so convincing because they're all around you, and they're real people. And you see, and they have volumetric info. You can look around them, and they have all the details. And when I use the word awkward, only so because it's so convincingly so. Yeah. It's like, imagine if you go to a dance floor and everyone's dancing around you. That's exactly it. And you had another demo where it was, what would you call it, where you're in the middle of a coliseum. Maybe you could talk about that one. That was interesting.
Yeah. So this came, again, I actually recorded a friend of mine as a gladiator. We just thought, okay, we put someone in a costume. It might be more interesting than just shooting normal people. So we put him in a gladiator costume, and he was quite convincing. And then I think I went on TurboSquid and bought like the Colosseum. And then we had some artists that would optimize the Colosseum for it, and I put him in, and it looked good. And then the company wanted to do an experience with Logan Paul. Logan Paul, big Vine star. He really wanted to do something with 8i at the time, and then he came in and he thought, I want to come up with something funny. He's a funny guy, comedian. He's got a huge following on Vine, and then he came up with this comedic piece that we then showed.
And the other piece that was memorable for me, in addition to that one, was having to do with astronomy and education, like with the cosmos and so on. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was before I went into VR, I was involved with Cosmos. I was the visual effects supervisor on Cosmos, the Space-Time Odyssey. So I wanted to show something that would help with education, that could maybe visualize the size of the cosmic calendar better, because of course the cosmic calendar is used in Cosmos as like, look how big it is and how small we are, and look how long ago the Big Bang was, and it's about comparing time with the size of of this large space. And I thought that would be very helpful in VR, because here in the walkable experiences you got a good sense of how large and how far things are. So this was, again, it was just not scripted. I just thought, okay, I'll just try it out. I pretend to be Neil deGrasse Tyson. Not quite. I was just like saying, here's this, here's that, and then have some things appear to show that you can do magic in VR. Yeah, you can combine it with scripted things that could happen there, and it was a lot of fun. But not a whole lot of work went into it, but still was shown to people who were interested in maybe exploring something like that in the future.
It was a very good proof of concept. It was memorable. That's what I will say. It was very memorable.
Galaxies around you and stars. I know it's something weird. And you step into the space and you have the stars above you and the galaxies turning. There's something about it. It's like, whoa, I feel good, And I had music playing when I was putting it together, and it just felt trippy and cool.
It worked out. Yeah. And the other demo which was memorable was do you call it the climb, or what did you call it, where you're on the mountain ledge? Yeah. Is that what you call it?
Very simple, easy demos. One of the first ones we did, even like the first very early versions of that were very, very simple. Just some boxes. You were up high on something that looked a bit like a rock, and of course we all know that works really well in VR. When you get when you understand distance and scale, then you understand that you're high up, and you get that feeling that you're high up. You don't want to fall down. You're like barely looking over the edge, so we just put a picture of a canyon, of a vista in the background, and some rough rocks, like a rock cliff in the foreground, and I recorded my colleague Sebastian Berg. He's on some green apple boxes. We recorded him in the studio, and he's pretending that he's climbing, because he's a climber, so he knows a bit how that feels. So, and that was put together quickly. And
another thing that was unique about that shoot, if I remember correctly, is you didn't need as many cameras to make that work compared to the others. That was
with an older camera setup that we used, only 21. Like the new setup that is being used is 42 cameras, I think, and that allows for the captures of humans to be completely closed, and you can walk all around the humans, and that one still allows for a lot of moving around it, but then there's some information missing at the back, which worked well with that experience, because he's a bit further away. Hopefully you don't quite see that there's something missing.
Yeah, again, it was convincing for me, and I didn't really get close enough to find out, to see the back of him, only because I was scared to cross the ledge, because it was really that convincing. Because really, you see this chasm, and you have to bravely cross that ledge. It's very, very convincing stuff. So where do you want to take Realtra? Where do you want to go from here? We're seeing these wonderful demonstrations. Where do you see the future?
Well, we want to show different experiences to a lot of people. Obviously, we're also talking to businesses, we're talking to brands, production studios, because we feel like we're ready for a lot more production to happen in this field, and we want to show people the value of walkable and volumetric experiences, which is weird because we live in a volumetric world all the time, and then a lot of people say, so how is this better than film or TV? And well, that's 2D. Okay, so you're missing a whole dimension. So we're adding a dimension back. And of course, there's still a lot of things that are missing. The technology is very early, but a lot of things are working. I want to explore what works really easily, and where do we get like a strong reaction. So we do get strong reactions from showing these demos. People get happy or scared, but they have big smiles on their faces often. So there's something in there here, something that needs to be explored further.
Well, I can immediately see a lot of applications for this, and I wish you a lot of luck with this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on MTBS-TV.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
This is Neil Schneider for MTBS at FMX 2016. We will, of course, be back with more. Thank you for watching.